welcome back to another Path to Self-Reliance video. Haven't done one of these in quite a while, actually. But there's been something that's been on my mind, and something that I get a lot of questions about from people, whether it's via email or social media or on the YouTube platform or whatever. A lot of people ask the question, what types of things should you look for in a homestead or a farm or whatever it is that you're looking for? If you're on this path to self-reliance, you want to be more sustainable, you want to provide more food for yourself and your family, what is it that you want to look for? So my wife and I, a lot of times we will watch, other homesteaders or other YouTubers or follow other blogs or people on social media and things like that. Maybe they're looking for property or they're just on the search for this perfect, homestead piece of land or whatever. And there's lots of different things to consider, lots of different things to think about, and everybody's circumstances are a little different. But sometimes we see people making some pretty big mistakes that we can see ahead of time. And so I wanted to share just some of the things that we thought about, and some of the things that we wish we would have found here, some of the mistakes that maybe we made, and just kind of what is it that you want to look for in a piece of property when you're looking to be more sustainable and live a sustainable lifestyle. And so number one, the first thing that I think you need to consider, and this is even before you start looking at really, you're gonna just need to come to the realization that the first thing is that you're gonna lose some convenience, because most likely you are not going to be as close to your job anymore. You may have to just even consider the possibility that you may look for a different job or something else that's closer to an area that's more rural. Generally, what we have found is that you want to get the most bang for your buck. And so you want to be able to sell the place that you're in right now for a higher price. Maybe you're in a booming market or something like that. You want to be able to sell at a good price, and then you want to transition into an area that is maybe more depressed. Maybe the market is not growing very well. Maybe it is an area that is, again, it's maybe more inconvenient. It's off the expressway somewhere. It's not the high demand area where the prices are as high. That's the only way you're going to really make out from selling a place in the city and moving out to the country. If you sell a place in a high market area, you're going to get a great value, maybe make some money off your house. But then you're going to, if you look for another place in a high value area, you're going to be in the same boat. You're going to pay a premium for that property and that house or whatever it is you're looking for. And when we looked at this piece of property out here, we were way further out than what we were really comfortable with. We drove out here and looked at houses that were even 15 minutes closer to our old community, and we were like, we're never going to move way out here because of jobs and travel and just other things. But this is where the market made sense for us and where we could get the most property and for the least price. And the second thing that you need to kind of consider before you even start getting out onto your property or even looking at property really is, what are you going to do? What are you thinking that you want to get into? Do you want to get into a lot of livestock? Do you want to get into cattle? Do you want to do goats? Do you want to just do chickens and maybe grow other things? How are you going to be making some income? What types of things are you going to do? In my opinion, any good sustainable system, it involves some livestock. And so you definitely want to consider that. I would consider something that eats grass, like a pasture pig or a sheep or goats or whatever that might be, cows or something like that, of course. And once you have determined, what you want to do, do you want to do mostly gardening and stuff like that and kind of leave the livestock out, maybe just do small stuff like chickens or whatever? Or are you going to go bear? Are you going to go cows? Are you going to do dairy? Are you going to do, a milking cow or raise cattle or something like that? And those types of things are going to determine really what it is that you need in your homestead. Number three, the amount of property. I see a lot of homesteaders, they may have lived in the city. They may have lived in including ourselves. We may have we lived on a half an acre, 3/4 of an acre in a subdivision. You may even live in a city that's smaller than that, or you may live in an apartment. And you start looking around and you're like, wow, 2 acres, that's huge, or 3 acres, that is so much property, or 4 acres or 5 acres. Now you can make a great sustainable piece of property on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 acres. You can do that in a subdivision. You can make a great sustainable system. But if you really want to raise livestock and things like that, you really need to consider the amount of space that you really need. We have 25 acres here, and I can tell you that it's already not enough for some of the systems that we wanted. We wanted to have cattle, and we just realized that we don't have enough hay and pasture areas and other things like that to feed much more animals than we have right now, other than smaller animals. And I can honestly tell you that you can never have enough property. You can never have enough, because you're going to use it. And as you start to really grow, and if you really want to live off the land, you can just never have enough. The property is the most valuable thing that you're going to put your money into. And so try to get as much property as you can afford. And again, you might have to reach out into those communities that are harder to get to, that are off the expressways, that are where the values are lower per acre, and you may have to sacrifice some on a house, but you want to get as much property as you can possibly get for what you can afford. It might seem like 10 acres is a huge piece of property from where you're at, but you'll be surprised at how quickly you can fill it up, especially if you do livestock. Leading into the next thing, what kind of amenities are you going to look for on a homestead piece of property? Are you just looking for vacant land and you're going to build a house? That's fine. But what I would recommend is looking for a place that already has some established pastures, that already has some established fields, where the land has been cleared and cared for, and maybe farmed, or something, at least that it's had animals on it where it's been cleared. Turning forest or turning managed land into workable pasture is an enormous amount of work. It's going to require a lot of equipment. It's going to require a lot of upfront cost. You might think that it's easy to just till up some area and plant it, but if you've got, it could be a lot of work, especially if there's trees involved and drainage issues and other things. It's hard to know. So look for a piece of land that has pastures, has fields that are already in there. They're already in place. Even if they've been neglected, if something's already been cleared and has had animals on it, that's going to be a huge asset for you. Outbuildings. What types of outbuildings are you going to look for? So if you want to do chickens, you want to do livestock, you want to think, you can never have enough outbuildings. And so look for something that has a barn already built on it, or if you have it in your budget to build a barn right off the bat, that's great. Build a nice big open pole barn and then tailor it to your animals and equipment and whatever you need. But if you have a place that has outbuildings, the more the better. You can never have enough little places to store things and use things and utilize as animal shelters or whatever it is. But you definitely want to look for a place that has some established outbuildings. With that being said, a lot of people will find old farmhouses and property that's really cheap and has a bunch of really decrepit old buildings on it. And you think, wow, this is so great, the charm, and it is. They're really cool. Old barns and things like that. But you got to be realistic. What's it going to take? If you got a big old farm barn that's been up there for 100 years, what's it really going to take to salvage that and make it usable? Most of those old barns, unfortunately, if they haven't been cared for, they're leaking, they're unsafe, and they cost an enormous amount of money just to re-roof or re-side or paint and things like that. So you got to be realistic with what you're looking for. If you can find something with a newer pole barn or newer outbuildings that are not in complete horrible shape, a few repairs, like we had some leaks in this barn. We had a barn door that fell off. There was other things like that needed to be repaired, but it was usable, and that's something that's really important. So that leads into the next thing, which is the house on the property. So that's usually the main structure, right? What are you looking for? Again, you need to decide whether you have it in your budget to start fresh and build something from scratch. And if you do, that's great. What I've seen a lot of people do is they'll get really carried away and excited about the land. Maybe you find a place that has 10 acres and it's in your budget and it's got a trailer on it. You've got some piece of property somewhere that had somebody put a mobile home on, or a manufactured home or a trailer or something like that. And you think, you know what? We'll live with it. The property's so great. Maybe it's got a cool barn. Maybe it's got all these great things. But then you've got a trailer, and you got to be very careful. Manufactured homes and some of these even really old farmhouses that might need just an enormous amount of work, or trailers, manufactured homes, things like that. You have to be very careful because number one, you're going to have a hard time getting loans in many cases for those homes because they tend to not ever gain value. Those homes just don't. Even if you renovate it and make it beautiful and upgrade it and spend all this money on it, you're going to end up still having a trailer or a manufactured home, and it will always be on the title as a manufactured home. And those manufactured homes, they just don't gain in value like a regular stick-built house does, or other types of homes. And so You want to be careful with that. You want to make sure that you're investing in something wisely and you're fixing something up and investing in your property over the years, so that if the chance ever came, you might say, I'm going to live here forever, I'm going to retire here. That's great. But if the chance ever came where you need to do a home equity loan, or you need, you don't want to be paying for something that is always losing value. You want to make sure you're investing wisely your time, effort, and money into a home. Although it might be enticing to get this perfect piece of property, but it has a trailer on it, or it has an old farmhouse that needs so much work in it, you have to be, you might say, I'll just do a little bit at a time. You just have to be careful. You can really get in over your head quickly, and you have to be careful with your time and your money. So back to the property. What do you look for in a piece of property? Outside of the house and outside of outbuildings and things like that, what do you look for in a piece of property? So I already talked about pastures. It's great to look for a place that's got some managed fields. The hay fields that were on our property are about, I would say they're about a third of our property here is hay field, managed, planted hay field. That is a huge asset for us. We were able to move right in here, get some hay equipment, and start making food for our animals the very first year that we were here. That was a huge deal for us. And that hay really is the biggest part of the whole sustainable operation that we have set up here. I've said this many, many times. It starts with this hay, and that's how we're able to feed all these animals at a very, very low cost, and raise our own food at a very, very low cost, and sell off animals and make money and all those things. It starts with that hay. Heating with wood, and this depends on where you're at and what environment you're in, but heating with wood was a huge thing that we wanted. We live in Michigan, so we need to heat our home, and I want to be able to do that 100% off of our land here. We came in here and I saw all this forest in here, and I was a little bit naive. I thought, wow, there's 4, 5, 6 acres of forest on this property. It's great. But you also need to consider, how old is that forest? What kind of trees are in there? There's honestly a whole bunch of softwoods in this forest. There's barely any hardwood trees in here, and it's hard for me to heat our home. Although I do have enough wood in here probably to cut out 10, 15 trees a year and plant some and keep that operation going, it's really not the greatest wood to burn. Now I do use it and it works out just fine, and most of the maples and softwoods, I have a lot of soft maples and things like that in there that burn okay. But you want to look at the age of the forest and how are you going to use it? Are you going to be making your own lumber and timbers and things like that? You want to look for a good wood, hickory, cherry, oak, sugar maples and ash if you still have ash around, and lots of other good hardwood trees that you can use. Good established forest is a huge asset for a farm. Also, what kind of features are you looking for in the land? Ponds, lakes, rivers, creeks, drainage. One of the things I've talked about many times on this channel, something that I kind of missed here. When we bought our land, it was all dry. It was in September and it was all dry and looked great. And we went through our first winter here and spring here, and it was there was some serious drainage issues that are going to take me years to address with time and money and equipment and other things. It's going to take me years to figure out how to properly set up drainage on this land. That was a huge thing. And so if you have the time to check out your land in the spring or in different seasons, or even ask the neighbors around that piece of property, what is this land drain? What is it like? Are there creeks? Are there established river? You have river access? Do you have lake access? Do you have a pond? Water is a huge thing. It's such a great thing to have an animal pasture that has access to a creek or a pond, because those things provide water for your animals almost year round, and you don't have to do that. It's a huge asset. So something you definitely want to look for and consider. And the last thing that I think is mildly important is the terrain type in general. What kind of soil do you have? Is it in an area that, like, this area is kind of in a floodplain of the Shiawassee River, over the last couple thousand years. And so I think that we have really, really good soil here. It's also very flat here. And so, a lot of the water doesn't really wash nutrients away or anything. There's not a lot of drainage like I talked about. And so the byproduct of that is that you get a really good, healthy, moist soil the most of the year. And we don't really have to amend our soil too much unless we're really farming it heavy. Also, what kind of terrain are you looking for? It's nice to have some elevation. It's nice to have sloping land and maybe some hills and things like that. There's lots of things you can use that terrain for, building greenhouses and other growing areas like jalapenos and things like that into the earth. And you want to make sure that you have the terrain that's going to fit your idea of how you want to design and build your homestead. look at Google Earth and look at Google Maps and check out the satellite views. There's also, I'll put a link in the description, there's also a site that through Google that shows you historical maps of a piece of property. This is a huge asset, and I wish I would have known about this before we moved in here, because you can actually look at your property and how it's been used since all the way back in the 50s. There'll be some aerial photography possibly of your property that's been stored there. And then once we get into the age of satellites and things like that, you can get more and more and more views of your property over time. And so you can look at a historical record of aerial views of your property, you know, what's been here before. Has it been farmland? Has it been flooded? Has it been, you know, all the things that have kind of happened to your property, you can get an idea of that. So I'll put a link in the description to that. It's a great tool to use and check out your property. So hopefully that helped you guys out. If you're looking at buying or you know, building a homestead from scratch, or buying a piece of property and updating it and creating a sustainable, self-reliant life, it is a great, rewarding, satisfying way to live. And so I wish all of you success and luck in God's blessing on what you're doing and what you're planning. And I'd love to answer questions. If you have any, please ask them through email or through the YouTube comment system. And you homesteaders out there, please share what it is that I missed. What are some other important things to look for in a piece of property that maybe I didn't talk about? And so I encourage you guys to look through those comments and see what other people have shared as well. So don't forget to hit thumbs up on every video, and that's the SSLFamilyDad channel, of course, and subscribe if this is your first time here. I'd love to have you follow along for our journey and hopefully learn some things along with us here. We like to share what we know and sometimes what we don't know. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.